Hi guys, I'm Matt Schlicht from Zapchain, and I'm here with Christopher Smith, who knows a lot about Bitcoin. How long have you been working with Bitcoin?
About 3 years now.
Which is a really long time. Bitcoin's only existed for 5, and most people have only been working in it for like 1 or 2 years. And a tremendous amount of people are just getting introduced to it now. Hi guys. Yeah, so welcome. We're really excited that you can help us explain money and what is money and kind of is Bitcoin money? Is it good money? Is it bad money?
Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So let's start with money. So let's forget about Bitcoin. Let's forget about Bitcoin. So money in general, like what is that?
I mean, it's a good question. It's kind of strange that we spend our whole lives chasing after this money, but we don't usually stop to ask, what is it? Why does it work? Why did it evolve? I can go buy a snack from the grocery store for $5, right? And then a $5 bill, I trade it, and then that grocer can then take a bunch of $5 bills and go use it to buy even more snacks from a distributor, right? And the distributor got them from someone else, right? So it's like a really complex chain of events that leads to me just buying something from the grocery store. Without money, this becomes a much more complicated process. A lot of the middlemen have a much bigger job, and so it would be like I'd have to go to the original snack maker and barter with them. And if I didn't have something they wanted, if I didn't have a service or a good that they would be willing to accept, then I'd be out of luck. I couldn't have their snacks.
Right.
Which
would suck.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's a big problem. Money is like an abstraction of human productivity. And I think abstraction maybe sounds kind of complicated to some people, but it's really not. We use abstractions all the time. It's like an abstraction is just an intermediary or a placeholder. And so instead of having like a bartering win-win situation, say I give you cheese and you give me a coat, instead I can say, okay, I'll give the cheese to someone else.
We should do that deal, by the way. That's pretty good for you.
You like cheese, huh?
Yeah.
We could. I can sell the cheese to someone else. They give me money, the placeholder,
right. And
then I give you the money in exchange for the coat. And that way, I can get the coat even if you don't like cheese. You might not like anybody's cheese,
right?
And so, that's the abstraction layer. It allows us to interface with each other.
Super useful.
Yeah. So really, anything can be used as money as long as lots of people will accept it for trade. Right. However, some things are better for money than others. It's like you wouldn't choose tulips as your form of money because, like, let's say you need to save up for the coat. You're not making a lot of money on your cheese. You got to save up for a year. Well, if you're using tulips as your money, then after 2 weeks, everything you've saved is dead. So it's not good for money.
Don't use tulips.
Right. So there's also other properties that make good money. Like you want it to be scarce. You wouldn't want to choose the leaves of trees for your currency, right? Why should I give you my cheese in exchange for the leaves when I could just go pluck them off the tree myself and not give you my cheese?
Right.
So it's kind of a silly example, but what's the principle there? It's supply and demand. How much you can charge for something depends on how much there is and how much people want it. So when the money is scarce, that allows the value to be fairly stable. And the reason this is important is you can think about it like, what if the meaning of words was changing from one day to the next? Then it would be really confusing. You have this, it would be very difficult to communicate. So the same thing happens with money.
How'd you go to the bar?
But
you guys will get it. So how do we decide, like, if I do want to buy your cheese or a coat or whatever you're selling? How do we decide that this money that I'm going to use to buy that is good?
Well, it's not just one person's decision, right? Because it's sort of like if you trade with other people a lot, you end up figuring out that it's good to collect things that lots of people want. So Bitcoin is a sort of endpoint of that process where it's less and less specifically valuable as a tool. You can't eat money. But it's something you can trade with people.
You could, maybe.
Well, you could, yeah. I wouldn't recommend it.
Don't do it.
But
they're learning a lot about what not to do today.
Right. I mean, there's money is only valuable because other people are valuable, right? If you took all your money to the moon with you. You couldn't build a house with it. You wouldn't be the richest. You'd be the richest person around, but there's nothing to buy there, right?
Right.
So I mean that's a kind of, we get fixated on money. There's a sort of emotional attachment to money. I mean, if people think about, if I lose my job, they get scared. It's like there's a real starvation fear there, right? And this is the same sort of emotional bond that we used to have as a tribe when you knew everyone in your community.
Right.
If your tribe hates you, then you're probably going to die because you need other people to survive. But now, through the abstraction of money, we don't interact directly with people so much. We usually interact through this interface, this abstraction of money.
Right. There's no bias.
Well, right. It reduces bias, but it also has an inadvertent effect that we get emotionally attached to the interface and not to each other. And so lots of people will abuse other people for money, which is kind of silly because all you can buy with money is the work of other people. So, but if you're saying, so it's a collective decision, what is good money? In the sense that it needs to be something that lots of people agree is good for money.
Right.
And so one thing is, like we said, it shouldn't rot. That it needs to be a store of value. So this is why traditionally precious metals were used as a form of money, because you keep them for long periods of time and nothing happened to them, as long as they didn't get stolen or something. Another thing we were saying is it should be scarce. If there's too much of it, or if the supply is unlimited or varies from day to day, it's not stable enough to use as an abstraction. Another thing is a property called fungibility, which basically means that all the units should be the same. So it's not like, so you wouldn't use rubies as a form of money. I mean, you could, but I have 1 ruby, I trade for 5 rubies, and then I try to use it to buy something else, and then they say, well, I don't like that ruby. It's very pretty.
Right.
You want it to be like, one $5 bill is the same as another $5 bill. 1 ounce of pure gold is the same as 1 ounce of other pure gold. There's no reason to prefer one over the other.
Right.
Right. Because when I'm buying a snack from the grocer set the price from an expectation of what they're going to be able to buy with that price. So if they sell me the snack for $5 and then they go to their distributor and try to buy more snacks with that $5, and the distributor says, no, that I don't like that $5 bill. Bring me one with a prettier face on it. It should smell better. Then we're back in the bartering situation.
Right.
And it's basically like the Tower of Babel, except for with money.
Which would be horrible.
Yeah, it's confusion. We're trying to build a tower to heaven, right?
Yeah, plus you put $1 in your pocket, it gets wrinkled. You want to still be able to spend it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's another important property of money is that it shouldn't be difficult to counterfeit or to steal, because money is supposed to.
It shouldn't be difficult to counterfeit.
Yeah, you're right. It should be difficult to counterfeit.
Should be difficult.
Right, yeah. and difficult to steal.
Right.
Because the amount of money you hold is supposed to represent how much you've contributed to the economy minus how much you've taken from it.
Right.
Right. But it doesn't always mean that, because sometimes people steal, and also sometimes people create fake money. We call that counterfeiting. Right. And so counterfeiting is basically like stealing a little bit from everybody, because because you're basically getting the right to ask for things from the economy without ever putting anything in.
And you're increasing the amount that is there too.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, so it ends up decreasing the value of the money slightly.
Which is a downside of the dollar.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important aspect. So
which I think may be a good segue into Bitcoin.
Yeah, let's talk about Bitcoin.
So, and that's what they're here for anyways.
Right, that's right.
So we have the dollar, which you can counterfeit somehow, and you could steal if you're a pirate or a bank robber or something. But Bitcoin, can you do that with Bitcoin? Can you counterfeit a Bitcoin?
No, and that was the deep problem that Satoshi solved when he created Bitcoin.
The creator of Bitcoin.
Creator of Bitcoin, because there was many people were working for years to create an electronic currency, but they kept running into this issue that if it's purely electronic, it's just zeros and ones. It's basically a file on your computer, and you can just copy it, and then that's basically counterfeiting.
Like you do with music.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I got all my music.
Right. Once it's in zeros and ones, it's a duplicatable resource, so there's no way you can really stop that from happening. So the way this problem was traditionally solved was you had, because we use electronic money, right, when you scan your credit card, or you send it over the internet. But the way this is solved right now is you have a trusted third party, usually a bank, and it has a ledger, like a big spreadsheet of everyone's accounts and how much is in them. And then they can tell whether everyone is playing fair. They see all the transactions that are announced, and they make sure that you don't spend money that you didn't have.
Right, because I guess it would be bad if I had like $1,000 and then I was able to just spend that $1,000 in like 3 places at the same time.
Right. That would be basically counterfeiting or
Right.
or stealing in a certain sense.
Right.
So the way Bitcoin does is it says, okay, we're going to take that ledger and give it to everybody. But then, and now everybody has a copy of the ledger. But
So the ledger being the thing that keeps track of, you have this much, I have this much.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So of all the accounts.
Right.
And so that ledger is distributed, but then it uses cryptography to make sure that you only can change the part of the ledger that you're authorized to.
Right.
So I can't spend your money, and when I send you money, it doesn't become official until everybody in the network hears about it, so that everybody can update their ledger and be in sync.
Right.
So that's how everybody has the same ledger. It uses the same peer-to-peer technology that torrenting uses.
Right, which is kind of the beauty of Bitcoin, is that it's not controlled by one government or one entity, and it's completely, distributed and decentralized.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so I think that's one of the, it's difficult to counterfeit dollars, right? You have to put a lot of work into it. They put lots of, fancy print on it to make it difficult.
But if you really, really wanted to,
That's true.
You could do it.
And I would say that I don't want to mischaracterize it, because in a certain sense, with Bitcoin, there's this, the ledger, the blockchain, it's the history of the Bitcoin economy. You could come to a Bitcoin node or the Bitcoin economy and say, actually, here's a different ledger. This is the real one, and maybe you changed it to give yourself more money or something. So that's where the proof of work comes in. That's another aspect of Bitcoin, this cryptographic proof of work, and it's basically inside the blockchain. In order to make changes to the blockchain, you have to solve these math problems. And they're difficult to solve. You basically just have to brute force it and spend a lot of computing time looking for the answer. And so what that does is that gives you a mechanism of consensus. You can see how much what everyone else thinks is the real true economy history. So if the network is presented with multiple blockchains, it always chooses the one with the most work associated with it.
Right.
And so you think of that proof of work as being like making the printing of the dollars very complicated. They put the watermark and they put the fancy stuff in the background, and all of the things they do.
Right, and so when you're saying that the blockchain is distributed and this ledger is, there's nodes, basically, these little points all around the world that are keeping track of what the true ledger is, and they're constantly like, this is my ledger, like, what's your ledger? Oh, okay, we have the same ledger. Okay, we're good. And then it basically does that all around the world all the time, right?
Right.
And kind of what we're referencing, because this does start to get a little complicated, is miners, right?
Right.
Which we won't go into super detail yet about that, but basically, do you want to do a really brief, just for the people watching?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So the idea, there's a certain logistic issue with, if you're trying to introduce currency into an economy, who do you give it to first? Right? Traditionally, it's sort of like, well, let me just give it to my friends, and they can give it to their friends, and it creates this sort of imbalance where some people have access to lots of money that they didn't really earn.
Right.
With Bitcoin, it solves that problem by saying, okay, in order to make it difficult to counterfeit Bitcoin, we need a lot of compute power.
Yep.
That it just has to be something that's difficult to do. And
Right.
since it's difficult to do, you need to incentivize people to do it.
Right.
And so as currency is introduced, it's given to the people who are doing the work to secure the blockchain in proportion to how much work they're doing.
Right.
And so this does create a barrier to entry, in the sense that you have to be able to get this mining equipment to do all the calculations for you.
Right.
But you're actually doing something to contribute to the economy in order to get it.
Right.
Get the currency, which is in many senses different from the current model. And so people buy these miners, which are specialized computers to just do these calculations. It's a cryptographic proof of work.
Yep.
So it's sort of like a trap door, or it's something that's very difficult to reverse engineer. So it's like you throw something through the function, and it pops out on the other end some random number. And if you change the input just a little bit, the output is totally different.
Right.
And so you don't know when you're close to the right answer.
Right. And so basically, people all around the world have built or bought these mining computers, which at a high level, what they're doing is the thing where they each have a ledger of all transactions that have ever happened with Bitcoin.
Right.
And they're constantly checking with, all the other mining computers, and there's a lot of them all around the world, to make sure that, you have this many Bitcoins and I have this many Bitcoins.
Right.
And that's what's securing the network.
Right, and I would make a distinction between miners are sort of specialized nodes. You can have a full blockchain without being a miner. So you can just, and that's what's democratic about it, in the sense that you can just opt in and say, I want a copy of the history of the Bitcoin economy. I want to look at it myself, or I want my computer to scan it, and you don't have to be mining yourself. And when you scan it, so what these nodes are doing is they're checking that when you're sending people money, that you're authorized to spend that money.
Right. So that you can't spend the same Bitcoins twice.
Exactly.
Which is that's actually why Bitcoin at a core is pretty awesome, because they figured, Satoshi Nakamoto, who we don't know who he is, which is also kind of awesome, gets me really excited. He was the first person ever to create this technology that can make sure that I can't spend the same, digital currency twice, which is super cool. So, do you think that Bitcoin is money? And do you think it's good? Like, should people be accepting it?
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, anything can be used as money, and including Bitcoin. And I think Bitcoin is particularly good as money because it has the properties that we normally associate with good money. It doesn't rot. As long as there's a copy of the blockchain somewhere on Earth, you still have your Bitcoin. Yep. It's scarce. It's capped at 21 million. Yep. So you can always subdivide it further. If the pennies get too big and expensive, you can cut the pennies into smaller pieces. But there's never going to be more than 21 million. And it's fungible. It's as fungible as dollars. And it's difficult to counterfeit. And when properly secured, it's actually more difficult to steal than dollars. Of course, nothing's ever impossible to steal. But if you encrypt your wallet, you could have criminals raid your home, take all your stuff, haul you off to jail or something, and they still wouldn't be able to take your money. Right. Which is, that's the first time in history that kind of thing can happen. And so, people hear there's a lot of public news about how people got hacked. And that's not the Bitcoin system getting hacked. That's people not securing their Bitcoins properly.
Right. It would be like, I have $1,000 in cash and I left that out in the open and not in a bank, and someone was able to go get that.
Right. It's like
it's not the bank's fault. It's not the U.S. government's fault. It's like, it's my fault.
Right. And you wouldn't keep your life savings in your pocket. And so likewise, you don't keep all your Bitcoin in one place.
Right. So I guess here's the real question. If you were selling cheese and I had Bitcoin, could I buy your cheese? Would you let me buy the cheese with Bitcoin?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There we go. Perfect. Bitcoin is for cheese.
No, but I think that there's another issue, though, that I think is not obvious, which is, people don't really learn about in school without having to take very specialized classes how the current financial system works, right? In almost every country in the world, there's a central bank, which is a special kind of bank that is given the authority to print money. And when you think about this is a really incredible power you're trusting someone with, right? I think pretty much everyone would use that power to help themselves and their friends out, even just a little bit, if they were given it. And so that's when in Bitcoin, you talk about a trusted third party, right? The bank is where you route all transactions through. And so they have the ledger that they can see that everyone else is playing fair. Right. But since they're the only ones who have the ledger, no one can see that they're playing fair.
Right.
And so Bitcoin is more symmetric. Everyone has the ledger, and so everyone can keep everyone else in check.
Everyone is the bank.
Everyone is the bank. Yeah, and it ends up being like a bubble where everyone's pulling on each other, and it ends up being symmetric and strong.
We're keeping each other in line.
Yeah, and instead of so that way you don't. If you're going to design an economic system and for it to work, you have to trust that everyone's a really great person.
Right.
It's just not going to work. That's not a solution.
Right.
So Bitcoin works even if everyone's a jerk.
There you go. Bitcoin. For jerks. And cheese. All right, awesome. I think this was super helpful to everybody watching. And Bitcoins can be really complicated, and money itself can be super complicated. And so I think this was a lot of really great information. Thank you for thank you for telling us all of this.
Yeah, you're welcome, Matt. Yeah, it was great to have you on.
Cool. All right. Bye, guys.